Welcome everyone to the candidate interviews, and we have Amie Clarke this evening. She resides in Ward 4 and is currently serving a term on the city council and is running for a seat. Remind us how that all happened last time.
The way I remember it, back in the days of old,
Before the pandemic.
Yes, back in those days of the pandemic that still exists. I was running for Ward 4 council member because Fritz Steffens was leaving and no one seemed to want it. So I decided, sure, I'll do it. And it's funny because my neighbor across the street is so friendly, and he said, just don't let it break your spirit. Like, don't let him change you. It's like, what? What's going on? He knows things. So I ran against someone who signed up. Denise had signed up to run against me. I was really hoping to go unopposed because I definitely wasn't feeling like I'm going to beat out somebody. I didn't have like an agenda in that way, but we ran together, and I did lose by 3 votes. That was a bit painful. And but she decided to decline, and then it was up to the mayor to make a selection. And so I just, put on my Sunday's best, as it were, my cleanest blazer, and I went down to really introduce myself and sit in front of the mayor, Don, and he was kind, and we sat together and we talked about everything. We sat for about 45 minutes because he's like, who the heck are you? And we talked, and in the conclusion of that meeting, he felt compelled to recommend me to I'm not really sure why my dogs are wrestling right now because this meeting started, but he decided to recommend me, and then he introduced me to the council. They had to then vote me in and agree to it. And then there it was. So I felt very fortunate to be given the opportunity. Yeah. And I definitely wish the best to Denise. I never got to meet her. It was a really weird time to be running, as most of the other council people remember. Going door to door was tricky. I did it, but I was at a distance, and I got to speak with very few people. But the ones I spoke with, I feel like I represented as best I could.
And here we are, and you've chosen to do it again.
Yeah, you know what? Right. Well, yeah, I just feel like I'm like, man, it's been 9 months. And I wanted to continue on because I knew Tom was leaving, and I then signed up for the 2-year. I found that someone was running in the 1 year. I thought, okay, great. That's amazing. Someone's coming forward. That's incredible. So I decided to run for the 2-year, and pretty well unopposed. And then, my opponent signed up, and here we are. We're buying things. We got signs in yards. We're in the whole gamut. I appreciate it because now I'm fully in to all the many things that we have to do to run for city council. So I'm getting all the tips.
Who is your opponent?
Don Stilo. He is the current mayor, and he is well respected. When I sat with him and he was appointing me, I sat with him and I said, he kind of was, mayor was fun for a while, but man, and I said, well, of course you're mayor. You were the superhero, because the way I understood it, he had the garbage contract for the city. And I was like, that's like every child superhero that I've met. All the kids I meet are just like, trash man, like when the trash man comes, it's like the best day ever. And they just want to be the trash man. They want to know the trash man. They want to drive that truck. So I always thought that was cool. So I guess
how is it running against the person who appointed you?
It's interesting because then I feel I don't know. I think I weigh out. I don't know enough, right, of kind of his viewpoint, but I think it's kind of like, hey, you appointed me. You had the opportunity to, I guess, run for the 1 year, but you chose the 2-year. Maybe that was always the plan. I'm not sure, but I don't know if it's just that he wants to not, he still wants to be involved, or yeah, he's not satisfied with my work. I'm not sure. I didn't get any feedback on that. Maybe I'll talk to the boss.
It's got to be a pain in the butt to be the mayor and only get to vote when there's a tie.
Right. Well, and I gave him that opportunity. I was well aware, and he kind of like popped up like, So I gave back. He gave to me and I gave back to him.
So when you decided that you were going to run in the first place, but specifically this time, whoever your person is that you go to and confide all of these crazy ideas that we get in this world, my husband has learned after all these years when I say, hey, I have an idea. And he's like, okay, what should I brace for? Because there's always something crazy coming. When you went to your person, what did they say when you said you were going to do it again?
That's a great question because I think, immediately it's like, I'm supportive, but I don't want to see this like tear you down. Like, I don't want this to be the thing that makes you feel crummy about yourself or something like that. Because it is, as we've all learned, it's a very thankless position. And you get in there and you're like, I'm going to do the thing. And then you get in there and you're like, oh, there's so many things. And decisions have to be made so quickly. And there's so little time to get those decisions flipped. And you do want to incorporate everybody that bothers to communicate with you. And when you feel like you're going through a checklist in your mind of what's being accomplished, and you're like, I think we're on a roll and I'm going to listen. Yeah, it's just one of those things. And running again, it was just kind of like, you have to have this moment. Because of course, when I found out Dom was running, I'm like, if like he wants to do this and he feels passionate about it and he wants to represent, the moms of the neighborhood and the new people that are moving in, then I don't really want to ruin that for him. But at the same time, I'm like, it just feels different. And I just feel like I want to push forward because I've established these relationships and I've had my neighbors give me the feedback that they want to see me in it. And from the other surrounding neighborhoods near me, they want to see me keep going with it. I've not been perfect at it. It's been such a learning curve. It's so humbling. But I feel like I'm just getting my feet wet. So I do feel good about pursuing forward. And so definitely anyone around me, my dogs, especially because they've had to go on walks with me to deliver campaign material. So they're totally in. They're like my number one supporters. They never talk back. But yeah, so it's, so yeah, it's been good. It's been good to just like stick to it. You have to like make that decision and then follow it through.
So when did you move to North Kansas City?
In 2015.
Why did you decide to settle here?
So it's really funny because my mom is obsessed with North Kansas City. We grew up in Northeast originally, just hop over the river. And so we grew up there until I was around 11. We had a house fire. And I said this in the last interview last year that for a spell when our house was being repaired, I lived in Sunny Hill Apartments. And I thought it was super cool. We had this awesome townhome and I was ready to live there forever because I love my room. I loved everything about it. But we moved back to Northeast and we moved out to the burbs later. But moving here, for me, it was just that like I just had my income. I had paid off my student loans. I had like set myself up because I didn't really have the idea that I was gonna like buy a house until probably 2 years before I decided to buy a house. And then like I was on Zillow. SNL finally did a sketch, and I feel like they owe me some credit or something. But I would always talk about like I was on Zillow like it was my porn. Not to use harsh words, but I was always on Zillow, and I found this house. It already had 3 offers, and I needed to have it, and it was in disrepair. They were like non-disclosure buy, like we're not doing anything. Just come in here at your own risk. But it had such charm and character, and it just like. This is the place for me. And I just loved it. I love the layout. It had every one of my asks. And then I explained this in my last interview last year that like when I looked across the street, I saw an HRC sticker, Human Rights Campaign. And I just thought, I think I'll be safe here. Like this feels right. And I'm going to do it. And it just worked out. I wrote a letter, to the owners, and they're homeowners. And apparently who lived in my house used to be a council member and also used to be on the board at the hospital. And maybe even I thought someone told me, I thought my neighborhood informants told me that he was the CEO at one point of the hospital. Now we're talking back in the 50s. So I don't know, guys, but I'm like 1950s chic right now. Like I'm big in the 50s. Like, I love this house. Love my house. I feel like I love it here. So, and I love all the different neighbors and pockets of people that have come through. And there are older populations on my block that just wow me. They astound me. Like, there are people that are retired. I didn't even know that's a possibility. I mean, that's not something that I can imagine really, but I believe that maybe it'll happen. Maybe when I'm like 93. But there are people in my neighborhood that are retired. They have stories to tell me about how they came to this house to party and how they swam in my pool and all sorts of things. They were Boy Scouts, and the guy that owned my house was the scout leader. Yeah. So it was just, I liked all that. I liked that there was story behind it, and it was a house well cared for. It just kind of went into disrepair because they finally said, okay, we love North Kansas City, but we got to get out of here because it's really hard for us to take care of the house. So we've got to send it on to somebody else. And I was so glad they chose me.
You know, you just told everybody you have a swimming pool, right?
I know. If they help me clean it, come on over. Come on over.
So you learned a lot this past 9 months or so of being on the council. We've learned a
Yeah.
lot as a world in the last year. The pandemic has taught us a lot about what works already and what needs some attention. Um, what did the pandemic teach you about leadership?
Leadership. That you really have to, because it was really tough. The toughest time, because obviously I'm going to hone in on COVID and the constraints and what it did to our small businesses and to just the framework of every bit of our community of being able to communicate with each other and how everything changed. Campaigning was different. Everything was different. And we had to shift. And the biggest thing is just, I learned that you still have to look out for the greater good, and you have to stick to it. You have to stick to your guns, and you can't be kind of pushed around or swayed when someone is operating in fear. Because I feel like even the mandates or recommendations weren't necessarily fear. They were, the fear was there, obviously, of we don't know. When you're looking to experts and they're like, we're just discovering what to do with this thing. We're still figuring out what it's doing to people. And there's still stuff we're uncovering. Oh my gosh, it's affecting mental health. Oh, our organs, just all sorts of ups and downs. And I think just trusting science and the process and just going, I'm going to trust the experts. I have to lead forward with expert opinions, base it off of that, and try my best to tell small businesses that, called us. I think Jesse mentioned it too. We all got that call from a particular small business that said, if you do the mask mandate, we will not recover, period. We will go away. And fortunately, I visited that facility. They're still alive and well, and they're doing great. I feel like they're thriving beyond what they imagined. And it's just one of those things where I just felt like we had to stick to our guns. It was super painful. It wasn't easy. Too bad, there was nothing in it for me either way, except for I would see my neighbors still. They wouldn't have perished. And I think we accomplished it. I didn't lose anyone on this block to COVID. I'm excited about that. And as far as I know, I don't know about community members that didn't, but yeah, a part of that leadership and, connecting with the CEO of the hospital, that was huge. And that helped guide us. And I think, to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. And I touched base with my neighbors, and I touched base, obviously, with Dr. Reinches at the CEO of North Kansas City Hospital to just get that input. We were seeking that input. Which direction should we go? Because we could start to waver or could start to ease up, but we decided to press forward to say, this is for the best. We've got to keep our community alive so that we have a community at the end of all this.
Tough choices, no matter what.
Yeah, definitely.
So you are enamored with the history of your house and your block. And I love the charm and the history of North Kansas City and the fact that we once had a thriving retail area, and I hope we regain that at some point in the future. We've got this rich history. My house just turned 100 years old.
Awesome.
It's so cool. So how do you take that history that North Kansas City has, and because it's been rich in even North Kansas City High School, the education, the industrial area, the hospital, all of this history that we have. How do you, and what is the one thing from our history that we want to carry with us through into the next century? Because we're about 10 years into this new century.
We can talk about history of flooding and how we haven't done that in a while. No.
Thank you.
Yes. No, it's huge. That's a great question. I think what we want to carry forward is sustainability. We want to welcome people. We want to welcome everyone. We don't just want to limit this idea that you have to be from North Kansas City to live in North Kansas City. There are so many different people on my block, and I love it. And some of them have decided to leave because they just thought, well, one of my old neighbors would joke and say, well, I had to go introduce myself because I was the brown person in the neighborhood. And I was like, you're ridiculous. He's a Navy man. He serves our country. He was amazing. They were both from Pakistan. They were so fun. And I would never want anyone to feel that way. I want everyone to feel welcome. And North Kansas City has so many opportunities for families, for a single person, for, all the animal lovers in the world. We'll allow you to have all those cats and dogs and rats and bunnies and whatever you want. Bring it here and share it. You know what? I did research chickens, and unfortunately the avenues, you guys cannot, but I am close to being able to have it because there is an ordinance that says that you have to be within 72 feet. Like the chicken coop cannot be within 72 feet to the nearest house. And I'm like, if I put it like, I have this like special spot that if once I follow through, I think I can have chickens. But I still have to do my research on that. I don't want to just like willy-nilly it and think that I know what I'm doing, and then I have dead chickens in the back or something.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Yeah. So I think just as far as what we want to push forward or celebrate the rich history is just to add to it. Weave everybody into that history because we are the history of it right now. We're living it. We're telling the stories. I'm listening to the stories. Stories tell a history. And if we can have a story that just is like, yeah, I had a great positive experience there. I remember going there when I was a kid. I had a shake, or my mom loves to talk about this or that, about coming up here. It was like the coolest place for her because she spent a lot of time with her aunt who lived in North Kansas City versus, at her house. And my cousins, they own Donut King, and it's just sort of like that history that's like tied in everywhere. And it's our stories that are going to celebrate that. And the more that we can bring people to our city and cause that interest and create a space for them to come and be interested in our city, I think that's what's going to propel us forward and keep us sustained and viable.
When you think about the future of North Kansas City, what gets you most excited?
Possibility. We still have so much. I know it doesn't seem like we have available space. I'm not looking to take over green space at all. I love the green space we have, and I want to hold on to as much as we can, while also following along with our master plan that's been, laid out, or I'd like to call it the primary plan. But I think looking forward, I look forward to the days where we can have more outdoor events. I miss the Swift Mile. I thought that was super fun. That was just such a fun event, and it led me walking all over the city, and I got to meet new friends who I'm friends with today that came from a totally different part of the city, from Branson area, and they're selling their goods and just meeting really cool people, and then ending up at Christine's Firehouse, and it was just like, this day is magical, and it was so walkable, and it was safe, and it felt good. And I want to see that. I want to see more of that. I could see us doing crit races down Swift. Who knows? I mean, the more we can get creative in what we can host as a city, it helps to move us away from this thought that we have to just build things like, apartments and more and more and more and more and more, which is still part of the plan, but that we can also just invite people in and then send them on home like we're the grandparents and just say, you know what? You were fun. Now you got to get and go home. So I think the more activity we can bring to the city and the more outdoor activity, that's what I'm looking forward to.
So were you here for Snake Saturday of 2015?
I believe so.
It was
What
a
happened?
it
Oh,
was a really warm day, and we had 125,000 people in our city that day. Yeah.
I know. I know that my friends up north were like, Snake Saturday, that's where it's at. And I feel like I did attend that with them. Wait, no, if it was 2015, I wasn't here yet. I was still in South KC. So that's where I was living. So it wouldn't have, because I moved
Right.
here summer of 2015.
So you missed that. That was the largest crowd we had ever had in the history of Snake Saturday. And we hope we're going to have great weather and pandemic will be over and we'll do it that way next year. 22. Okay. Um so the redesign of Armor Road had a lot of opinions about it. It raised a lot of ruckus in town. Um Not really talking about the Armor Road redesign itself, but what could we have done different that would have lessened the growing pains that people experienced? What could we take from that for future projects? Because we have lots of projects in process. What could we learn from that experience that would make it easier for these new projects?
Um, I think we saw the turnout, right? I'll reiterate what I did in my last interview, that I was a part of that process. I mean, I felt like I was a part of the process, right? Like, as just a voter, I did not know about getting involved at the city council level or really how things worked, or I just thought, hey, there's a meeting and I'm going to go to it and I'm going to exercise my right to vote. That's exciting. And I'm registered here and I'm going to do the thing. I'm a member of this community. And I just really, more than I've ever done in other communities, except for maybe Chicago, but I showed up and I did my stickering and I did all the things. Um, and I felt like I was a part of that process. And then I just sort of thought, like, now do your thing. And when there was such a pushback, I couldn't help but go, what's happening? Like, who feels pressured, or what is going on? Um, and I think, to me, I think what happens, on the council side, now that I'm seeing it, is just like, things were planned and did go through, but I think maybe it's so weird because I want to say maybe more visuals, but it's like, I was at the meeting where we voted on the visuals and the choices and what does it look like and the bike plan and all of those things. And I thought, it's all good. And I think we as residents just think like they'll get it squared away and taken care of because they're doing that side of it. We get to show up for the fun stuff. Like, yes, that sounds good. I'm for it. It's progressive and it's good. I think we saw the massive turnout for the town hall kind of gathering where everybody came in support. And I think it's just one of those where maybe when it's a decision to that scale of really affecting roadways and infrastructure, that we have to, to say like we have to call even more big meetings to have people come in. I feel like they did that. I just feel like they did that, but I don't know where it was missed because, of course, I wasn't in the room when it happened, when like final votes, and it's not a blame thing. It's just kind of, the feedback I've heard from council members and the mayor is just like, I didn't know that was happening. And it's, I was kind of baffled because I felt like I was a part of it. So many people were a part of it. Other people were there. I think, and it did affect the way I made decisions on the council, because to give an example, not to spin off, but to give an example, there was the parking lot vote and it was this huge deal and we were in this split, and I knew, I'm like, on the final vote, I could say yes and it could go this way, or I could say no and the mayor will chime in to break it. And I knew he was for it, but I just felt, for me, like I was hesitant. I had a hesitancy because I thought, have we thought this all the way through? Have we truly, truly, truly thought it all the way through? Because what happens is projects get developed and there's agreements, and then there's someone else takes over as the development, and then this gets agreed upon. And I know there's so much that goes into it, and I never want to be that contract negotiator because I've been in the mix of that, and it's fine, but it's a lot. It's a lot of things. But I decided no, because when I thought it through, I thought, I don't have enough information that I'm comfortable with in supporting this. And later I brought to the attention of of the city staff, I'm concerned about black tar pavement over 2 blocks causing a heat island effect. in a floodplain. It's like we're already in a floodplain. Where's the water going to go if you're going to cover up all surface and make it non-porous? So all those concerns are churning, knowing full well we've got to head in this direction, and we're headed there. And there's nothing I can do about it. There was truly nothing we could do about it at that point. And so I just thought, let me pump the brakes a little, put in my concerns. And they helped kind of quell my fear on that, because Sarah Copeland immediately jumped on it. She totally knows her stuff. I completely respect her. Where she sent me the information, the ordinance that says, you know what, we revamped our ordinances when it comes to parking lots back in 2016, and used Gould Evans, and that happens to be a group that I know was vested in a stormwater maintenance and alternatives for stormwater. Green initiatives, green space initiatives, like not just pipes, not just laying more and more pipes, right? And I felt more comfortable knowing that. But I still, was it fun to be a no and then get these like hate messages the next day? No, but it's kind of like that's what needed to happen if you weren't okay with the bike lanes. I think
Right.
it's not a chest bump, but it's kind of like that's the sort of level of thinking we have to think is like, what does this look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Mm-hmm. And when we think about the bike lanes and the Complete Streets project, everybody just makes it about the poor bike lanes that are just like, we're just a lane, but we got to think about the streetscape. I look forward to how awesome it's going to look and how it's going to be so welcoming. I don't want Armour Road to be Nolan Road where everybody's like, look at my new rims. And I know we've got great guys on our block with like nice trucks and things like that. Maybe that's the draw, is like I miss being able to drive, but it's like now you can go slower and show off that fancy truck, show off that Kevin's car wash that you just got, or maybe you watched at home. I don't know. Now I digress. But I think more people just have to, I think this has opened everyone's eyes to go, holy cow, decisions are being made and I need to be a part of the decision, because otherwise you can't just jump in after a decision's been made and go, wait, I care about it, because we are paying attention and we did go backwards and we did have to spend more money because change costs money. And we did see a list. And I will say point blank, for my ward, I had 3 people approach me, and I'm going 3 just in case it's actually just 2. But one said, I will vote for you. I don't like that when I leave Quick Trip, it takes me more time to exit than what it did before. Okay, Quick Trip moved. Problem solved. Quick Trip moved. So I was like, check. Nobody's going in and out of there. That's a tight spot anyway. That's where trucks turn, and so, okay. That was done. The other one was like, Amie, I just don't like the tight turns or, the handicapped parking spaces in front of the post office. Obviously, that was like a miss. That was taken care of. The tight turn on some of the corners, that's what we're exploring. We're marking the curbs. We're training people. Obviously, that was done intentionally to slow people down. But those were the specific things that I was told for my ward. And I feel like those were represented. They were checked off the list. And now there's some loose pushback to say, you weren't listening to us. I don't think to solve the problem was to rip everything out in a panic. That's not how we want to do anything in this city. You cannot feel pressured to rip things out. Once it's been established, voted on, planned, paid for, all those things, it's too much. We can look at it and we can modify. And I think that's what we've done a really good job of doing. It just doesn't seem that way because we haven't been able to move on things.
I think one of the things that you hit the nail on the head, though, when you went to do that vote about the parking lot, you were thinking about the unintended consequences of decisions and thinking enough steps out that you were asking the questions that made sure that those things were thought of. For me, one of the things on that parking lot is it's going to be surrounded on 4 sides by brick buildings, and it's going to be less visible for safety for women coming to and from. I mean, that to me, that's a concern. Is it solvable? Of course it's solvable. I don't know what the solution is yet, but thinking about the unintended consequences of what we're doing. Certainly with Armour Road, we didn't think about taking 3 lanes of traffic and moving it to 1. And could the pavement that's already there withstand that? Now we're going to have some repairs to the street itself because it was something we didn't think about. But I
Sure.
like the fact that you, in your decision to say no in the vote, you then did give mayor opportunity to vote, and presumably, and we hope that everybody's done their due diligence on the council when they go to do that vote. And to me, that is council work working for us. Everybody is doing their due diligence, and you voted your way and other people voted their way, and that's how it's supposed to work. So thank you very much for that. One of the things that we've discovered through this process is that we have a lot of independent thinkers in our community, both on the council and running for the council and as residents. How do you foster and preserve and protect that independent thinking? Because we need it, which will automatically breed a little bit of conflict, um, but still garner the cooperation and collaboration to get things done. How do you balance those two very different concepts: collaboration and cooperation, and independent thinking with conflict?
I just kind of want to write it down so I don't overtalk it. So collaboration and independent thinking with conflict. I mean, I just think that parking lot decision was kind of an example of that. And we could have handled it better. I think it's just really getting all the information out on the table. I think when we're, Ward 2, I feel like it's such good feedback to they feed their council person, their council people representing them. They seem to offer pretty good feedback for them. I don't get a lot of feedback from my ward. I think when we have the individual things like what I shared, like I'm concerned about the heat island effect. I think it's one of those where I think if we had a bit more time, or it's just like you start to think of things as the decisions being made, you're like, oh, but what's the thing, the long term. And I guess really it's asking of staff even. They do such a great job in their summaries, but I think in some of those things, it's really making sure in the summary we're touching on those individual possibilities. Like, show me how this benefits the city, how it benefits us in the long run, how it fits into our master plan. And I guess, in balancing, I'm okay to hear individual things that people have ideas for, but I need them to be, if it's just that you don't like the color yellow, I'll try my best, right? To say, you know what, we really can't go with yellow. Can we please not go with yellow? But I need a reason why, or I need a solution to the other side. Can you try to suggest what you do envision besides just saying, I just don't want change? I know I'm doing a crap job of answering this, but I feel like if I'm weighing out, right, the collaboration with the independent thought is, we welcome independent thought, but I want it. We always want to open the thought, because if you're everybody has to be flexible. I mean, am I satisfied with every single thing that goes on in the city? No, but I'm not going to necessarily speak up unless I have something as an alternative. That's like a rule of thumb in my work. It's just kind of, you can't just call in to complain about something unless you have a proposed solution. So yeah, probably just dance right on around that.
No, that's what we have to do. I personally ascribe to that same philosophy. I will never come with a concern without one or two potential solutions. Is it always the 100% right answer to it? No, but it's meant to, if I'm coming with a problem, I want to be a part of the solution to that problem, and I'm going to do my darndest to be a contributor to it. So thank you for that. I've been just checking the Facebook, and so far nobody has any questions for you, but lots of wonderful comments that you're going to want to read later.
Yes, really?
Yes. Yeah.
That's exciting.
What do you think the biggest challenge that North Kansas City is going to face in the next 5 years?
5 years. Well, you know what? I paid attention to that, the interview of the two mayoral candidates, and I appreciate Brian DeLong. He does his research, and I did not know that there is currently a bill that's being voted upon that says anybody with liquor license can actually have, a slot machine or things like that. Having been to Nevada and knowing how, I remember just being like, this is insane. Like going to a grocery store and watching a kid want a candy bar and the parents like, nope, I'm going to put it in this machine and pull it and hope. And it's, oh man, get the candy bar. No, I think that is something we have to think about. And I think we're moving in the right direction to allow for alternative forms of transportation, because when you think about apartment complexes going up, you think about we're going to still be recovering from this pandemic for years to come. This isn't just like a thing where we're like, oh my gosh, right guys, that was crazy. It's damaging. I mean, I still have friends that are unemployed, that were in the 6-figure salary range and have zero job to go back to because the job does not exist anymore. Multiple, not here, but just all around. I check in with my friends and I just think, I think we're doing a good job to prepare our spaces, to prepare our infrastructure for alternative lifestyles of maybe we're not going to look at having so many vehicles on the road. We're going to actually look at a lot more pedestrian traffic of just walking. I mentioned in my last interview that I'll touch on again is I would love to see, especially as we see like the essential workers working at the hospital that are not the doctors and nurses. How nice would it have been for those individuals that are putting in their time in a thankless position to provide affordable housing for them, to go, guess what? We're going to put you close to where you work so that you can just zip up the road. I mean, I have a guy who lives on our street now. He lives with his folks and he rides his bike to work every day. And that's his main mode of transportation. That is the mode of transportation he has to take. And I want to keep him safe, and it's not just about bikes and versus, we're not in a Broadway musical. We're just like, but it's just that feel where we have to prepare for change and shifts, and we have to try to welcome it as much as possible and try to plan for already setting the tone and the infrastructure to welcome alternatives and welcome shifts and changes. And I just think, we're not going to, I don't know. I want to be able to lean on Harrah's forever and ever and ever. It's a great place. There's so many, I don't know how many birthday parties I've attended there, but it's just like anybody that turns any age, even half birthday parties I've been to where they're like, let's go. And, it's just a fun place to spend money. And because you don't have to go to bed ever. But I just think, I mean, you do, but I just think we have to start to plan, like, build things right, build things well, plan your infrastructure to allow for variance if need be, but definitely don't hole us into something where you envision, we're going to be swimming in money at some point. Be nice to, but I think we just really have to, I think we're set up to be a really cool place to be. And I think we're headed in the right direction with that. But we do have to be mindful as we start to kind of settle to be super supportive of the initiatives we're taking. And if you're not supportive, like really put forward the other things you see, or, the committees that were put together by the mayor are the ones that came up with this, primary plan that we're following, that we're, hitting the check boxes. And do we need to revisit it because things have shifted so much? So I guess the concern is, we got to look at how much we lean on the gaming fund, because I swear every vote it was just like, and we'll use the gaming fund because they're swimming in it. It's like it's a really great thing. That's what makes us so great, because I feel like North Kansas City, we seem to be able to afford anything, but I think we're starting to go, oh, and nobody likes that, right? That little tinge feeling of like, what? Someone threatening our happiness? But we have to be aware of that. And how dare they? I think we just got to make it attractive and amazing, much like we do with like a movie theater. We're like, yep, nope, no other movie theater exists except for ours. So that's where we go.
That's true. There's another movie theater in Kansas City?
No.
So I'm going to quote Jesse Smith's question. Are you ready?
He wrote a question?
He did.
Jesse.
Other than hosting pool parties, how will you increase engagement from the residents of Ward 4?
Sure. Well, it's funny that you say that. I had this like harebrained idea because I was like social distancing. I've got to connect with my neighbors. I immediately tapped to the mega leadership of all neighborhoods, moms. When you're connected to the moms, you can move mountains. I connected with the moms on my block, and I just had to sit back because it was just like I talked to one, then it was like, what do you need? They just show up. They're just like, don't worry. Had to put my job on hold, taking care of the kids. They're also doing the online learning, and I'm saving the world slowly, keeping everybody. I mean, it's just nuts. You tap into the moms. So I had this great idea that I was going to do fire pit gatherings, and I checked with the city first because we have a great kind of dead end circle drive that used to be 26th Street, used to lead to the hospital, cut off. I moved here right after that happened. It was cool. So that little circle drive, I brought my fire pit, and we had a little kumbaya meeting. The funny part about that, which I guess I shouldn't admit to, or maybe I won't. I don't know if it's a good idea to.
Oh, just in for a penny, in for a pound.
I don't know what that means right now.
It means all in.
Okay. Because I just feel like I'm going to always interpret everything as like, I'm going to keep talking. But I brought my fire pit, and I was like, let's do this. And then I was wondering why certain people weren't coming. And then one person showed up, was like, hey, my daughter said I need to be here. I need to meet. And I was like, whoa, yeah, welcome. Like, right. This is getting intense. And everybody was like, had a different intensity than I was prepared for. And I just thought, wow, they've got lots to share. This is so cool. There's probably like 12 to 15 people turn up, which is amazing because I talked to maybe like 10 total in the past year of my ward in circulation. But it turns out there was some sort of like car theft that happened on the block like 5 minutes before I walked out of my door that I was 100% unaware of. So I'm like, ignorance is bliss, boop, 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 yep, everybody's for me. They were actually all outside, not for me, but like guarding their children because there was like a man on the loose or something. And I was just like, guys, right? And so the mom that was showing up was actually like, are my kids safe? Are we all going to die? And I didn't know that. It was pretty great. But people still came out. And I think they almost hoped I had already had like Chief Hargis like on the line, like, what's up, Chief? What are we going to do about this? I got my neighbors all here. I've got them organized, but I didn't have that kind of clout right then. I just wasn't aware until the meeting was over, and then everybody filled me in. But to go back, that's the other part of the story. No one was harmed, but there were guns drawn. The things happened right before I arrived with my fire pit, just blissfully unaware. But Sunny Hills also has a nice little circle drive up there, but it's more of a turnaround space, so I don't want to wreck that. But that's a thought too. It's just like hosting, throwing it out there to host like an outdoor fire pit gathering, because I just love being outside. I love camping. I love travel. Like I just love hiking, and so that speaks to me. It's just like let's just break some bread, just sit around a fire pit together and. Come if you will. You can bring your own fire pit as well. And I'll let the fire department know, make sure they know that we're doing the best we can to not burn anything down. We're in an open space, no trees around it. So yeah, that's my plan so far and I've hosted one, and it was after a Grand Theft Auto. So that was a good time. So successful, but maybe for the wrong reasons. Does that answer your question, Jesse?
It does. If it doesn't,
did he actually say like, tell her to wrap it up?
He didn't.
She needs to wrap it.
No.
All right.
He didn't say anything like that at all. What do you think the biggest challenge is? Let me start that over again. What do you think the biggest challenge is for businesses right now in North Kansas City?
Well, the restaurants are set because you and Joe just got it dialed in, man. There's like weekly. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go eat. Joe told me to. I think it is like getting the word out, making sure they're getting the word out to people, bringing people here, running. Oh gosh, I can't even imagine. You just got to tap into so much creativity. I will say though, I went to Colorado last week, and the restaurants were abysmal in the town we were in, just poorly run. And I just thought, they don't hold a candle to ours, and that's sad. But yeah, I think businesses are probably just facing kind of like, what's next? What do we do? Is this going to keep going on forever? But I think a lot of them have helped. I mean, I look at Excel Tube and they're like, we're good, business as usual. We're expanding. So we're about to bring more jobs. We're going to go ahead and expand our land over here. So things are looking good. That offers a lot of hope, I think, to our city too. But as far as like what they're facing, I mean, gosh, I'd have to turn the question to you, Mindy.
Well,
what do you think they're facing?
gosh, you had to turn the table on me. That doesn't usually happen. I think
Mhm.
honestly, the number one thing that I think that businesses are challenged with that the city could improve upon and help us with is the branding of
Mhm.
the city, a marketing strategy that lets people know where North Kansas City is, because that cuts down the marketing dollars we have to spend if everybody, when we say we're in downtown North Kansas City, we want people to know where North Kansas City is, where we don't have to
Yes.
explain that. So that's probably the one challenge that I think that the city has power over. The rest of it's up to us. I mean, we still have to do our marketing. We still have to do our responsibility to support our businesses. But the one thing that the city could do, that would be it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if we keep up all this argumentative behavior over complete streets, I think it's been great. Any news is good news. Let's just keep it up. Let's just like go to the streets, signs. I'm glad you said that because I would rather tap into someone like you that's an expert. I'm not a business owner. You guys have had to really just get as creative as possible. And I think you killed it in doing that and you spread yourself pretty thin. So I hope you said you are sleeping well at night. So I'm going to trust, but, branding of the city, that's huge. I agree. I was just in that Parks Board meeting and thinking about, there's plans for tournaments to come into town. And I've seen it online, my friends take their kids to tournaments. And I thought, how cool would it be? Because it's so walkable. If, Expressive, you guys are right down the road and say, hey, we'll take your kids and we're going to work on some cool stuff while the tournament's going on.
exactly.
We're going to be doing some creative stuff. So they're not just, running back and forth or things like that, which is still an option too. But I think just, we have all those people brought to town, give them some options. I mean, that's, that's what it's all about. If we start bringing large amounts of people to town and we start creating events, and believe it or not, you create big events like art events or biking events, those bring droves of people, those runs, things like that. And people start to scatter around. And then the marketing starts to serve itself, is that there's like a thing, there's a crawl, there's something to do. That is there's options, and everybody in their businesses starts to work around what those events are and how they can fit into it. And obviously all the business owners have to be that level of creative, or how are you staying in business? And I think you guys have done a good job of that, but that's a really, really good point to make, because I was just getting my hair cut, and the person cutting my hair I hadn't been to before, and she said, oh, North Kansas City, so like, is it by Liberty? Or I'm like, no. No, I want to tell them to you. No, so I had to correct and just say, no, hop over the river. That's us. Like right there. Like you could leave Farmhouse if you had to go there to meet family that's coming from the south side and feels like they got to hit downtown, and then you could just go whoop and you're already home. Like That's where I live. I can walk or I can ride my bike and I'll be in River Market before you can drive there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I agree. I agree on the branding, and it is tricky. It's such a battle to explain to people that North Kansas City is its own thing. And then there's Kansas City of the North.
Yes. I will admit, when Guitar Center put out their promo that they were opening in North Kansas City, I was like, what? I usually know what new businesses are opening in North Kansas City. I was excited. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. It was Tiffany Springs. And I was like, and one of my clients was playing the music for their grand opening, and I sent him a message, said, you might want to tell people that you're at Tiffany Springs, not North Kansas City, because that's not true. Get a couple more questions.
They just come to us. They
think
should
have opened here. I mean, everything should happen in North Kansas City.
Right. Sorry.
A couple more questions.
Yes.
What do you think about adding connection between Sunny Hills and River Forest?
Yeah, of course. I'm not creative enough to know how to do that.
Maybe walking.
because it was over the highway.
Valerie said maybe a walking bridge.
Okay, don't get me started on a walking bridge. We've all seen it in this pandemic because that's all we can look at is our phones after we get off work. And the sweet little deer crossing the way, being like, look at the successful walking bridge. That would be amazing. I think that would be awesome. I go see all my friends over there. No, it's really funny. I got a phone call from someone in Sunny Hills tonight that was pretty upset that I left him a flyer. But he took the time to call me to tell me he did not want my flyer and that he didn't care. I was like, hey, man,
your marketing material worked because they took action.
It did. He was like, I found the phone number. I was like, you're telling me that this was a success and you made the effort to tell me you didn't care. And I appreciate that because we're communicating. I was like, okay, I'm not going to remember where that was, but it was 1 out of 500 ain't bad on the phone calls. But yeah, I would love that. I would absolutely love that because I do have sneaky plans, not sneaky. Again, the moms in the neighborhood, we want to see an expansion of our park over here. Not even an expansion. We don't want to tear out trees. Everything stays as it is. Just need a little bit of play equipment right in the middle there of the River Forest Park. And then beyond that, cut through the little woodsy area, do some paths, do a little walkover bridge. That would be choice.
I'm
sure we got to get MoDOT involved.
MoDOT, that's a whole nother thing. But you just answered the last question that was submitted, which was about plans for a park in Ward 4.
Hey,
you did
yes.
It. So
yeah, it's really crazy because that was on my list like for the lat. But you know, when you hit a pandemic, everything starts to become like back burner because we're just scraping to survive, right? And now we're starting to go, oh, what cool things could we continue to do? So that's definitely on my list for Ward 4. We need it. We deserve it. We've got a lot of fun kids. We've got kids that are probably going to be future council members. I already see it. One of the kids definitely like runs the neighborhood. She makes sure everybody gets outside and plays, and she's fantastic.
I love hearing future leadership. So I have one last question for you before I let you go, because you had said that you were going to allot, 20 minutes or so, and we've taken up the entire hour, and I knew we would because we talk. Out of everything that you've talked about, you can't use any answers you've already given.
Ouch. Okay.
What are 3 favorite things about North Kansas City that you have not already mentioned? I know. Okay. This is my favorite question.
Merit Maid. Guys, what? Merit Maid came here. You guys don't know Merit Maid? They, oh man, I don't have her earrings on tonight. I always do. I lost one. I have to contact her so she can make me another one because I lost one of a pair. It's so frustrating. Merit Maid she does like custom rings. She does a lot of cool stuff, custom jewelry, and she makes it by hand. She's just cool. And so her shop is here in North KC, and I love that. Like I stalked her Instagram. So she's over by, she's like in that back area. Like if you're on your way, you pass Exel 2, it's kind of back there, tucked away. I can't tell you the exact address right now, but if you type it, I don't know the building. It's just one of the brick and mortar where you drive up and it kind of looks warehousey. And then you drive up and they're kind of in those little suites. Because then also my friend Sean Harrington he doesn't have a business yet, but I'm trying to convince him to go into woodworking. He is a mechanical engineer, but he has been occupying a woodworking studio up here in North KC. So he's kind of like, he'll probably kill me for that. But I really want him to do some woodworking and bring that here, because how amazing would it be? Much like we experienced with Tyler Kingston, I shop there all the time. It was so fun, and I was sad to see it go. But I like that his started with woodworking. He was like, hey, I'm repurposing furniture and things like that. I would love to see that come back around. I'm really trying to push my friend Sean to do that because he still occupies that studio space. And did I already say Vila Garage? Because I love them.
I feel like
oh, yes! I was trying so hard not to say their names so I could say it at the end. I did it.
You did.
I did it. I love Vila Garage. They bring people together. They host amazing events. They get people talking. They get people disagreeing. They get people there's so many different people and moving parts that go and that cycle and that get together that you guys don't avoid the bike community. They're just incredible people. and there's no big push initiative except for safety. Let me just plug this, that, I'm reading a book. I'm still trying to finish it because there's so many different books stacked on my dresser, but it's called Right of Way. And one of the big indicators to me that freak me out that people aren't aware of is like when engineering firms have a project to put together, a streetscape that maybe doesn't have like a stop sign or a stoplight. They're not required to put one in by code unless like that city code happened to be so updated. But their particular engineering code would not. It says basically you don't. No stop is required unless 5 people have died there. Like, it's just disturbing to me. So I'm trying to make the point. I don't want anyone to have to die for us to have safety measures. Because like, I get it. There are moms that are looking at home right now, like, you know what? I'm going to make you one of the 5 if you don't stop. No, that's terrible. But like, I don't want to have anybody have to risk their life or be unsafe before we kind of hone in and go, holy cow, we need to make the streets safer. Even when we're crossing through our downtown areas and making it more vibrant, we want to see more people outside. I want to accidentally be driving instead of biking down there and look over and see people waving. I want to have to stop for people crossing the street. I want to have to see all that movement and energy because it feeds me. It's exciting. That's what we want. And we want it to be done safely. All right.
Good job. Good job.
I got a little hyper there.
I want to add on to your sentiment, I've said it a couple of times. My husband was actually hit by a Silverado truck while riding his bicycle. His helmet is what saved his life. Getting that phone call that your husband was hit on his bicycle. I had a friend of mine whose husband had been actually hit on Heart of America Bridge years and years ago before they put in the protected lane. And he did not make it. So getting that phone call was terrifying. So as we can contemplate Burlington Corridor and the changes that we still need to make to Armour Road and getting across I-35 so that people can bike from Ward 4 all the way into downtown, the problem isn't the bike lanes. It shouldn't be an us or them. It should be, how can we do this safely, keep the traffic flow going, keep the intention of what we want to do with the complete streets, but also stop the conversation about it being a us versus them bike thing, because it's not about that. It's really about what's best for our city and how do we make it work. If you're not happy with how it's working right now, let's come together collaboratively and figure out a way to make it work. Which that is really what you've been saying this whole entire evening, Amie. So thank you very much. I'm going to close with my normal spiel. April 6th is the general municipal election, and we did discover in this last year how important local leadership is to everything that goes on in our day-to-day lives. And while it is the most important election that we have, everybody seems to think that the presidential election is the one that we need to vote in the most, but it's really the impact of our local leadership has more impact on our day-to-day lives than even the feds do. So I'm going to implore you, beg you, if I need to come give you a ride, I will. I would just love to see everybody vote on April 6th. Vote for the candidate that you feel is going to provide us the best and strongest leadership for our community, regardless of what ward you live in. With that, I'm going to say goodnight, and I'm going to say thank you once again to Amie for taking the time out after a parks meeting this evening to join us, to let you get to know her a little bit better. Because one of the crazy things about North Kansas City is we might live in one ward, but it's pretty much a great attitude that we're seeing from all of our council members, that they're willing to listen to the residents regardless of what ward we live in. And we appreciate that, because we are a small community and we don't have to do it the way everybody else does. So thank you. And
thank you, Mindy.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.